Hi, this is Robert Clinky-Beard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. Really excited to spend the next 30 minutes with you and really find out what ways in which we can improve your business. If you go away with 1-2 improvements to your business on a weekly basis, that makes significant progress over the year. We really hope you enjoy the shows. I encourage you to like and share with your friends, your network, your family members. Based on my book, The Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs, I want to pull out some type of content, some type of nugget every single week, meeting a guest, and that helps you develop your business and become more profitable. So check out the Wilson 360 website, look at some of the coaching programs, look at some of the training courses, click on those links, figure out how can we help you. We have now 14 people on the team that can come and help your business. So cheers everyone, have an awesome day. Hi, this is Robert Clinky-Beard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. Really excited today to be joined by Darrell Turman. Darrell, good to see you.
Yeah, well, hey, you too. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
But it's been a long time since I've seen you, so nice to catch up with you a little bit. You know, a lot of our clients and our audience deal with the residential design build space, pools, kitchens, outdoor living. So I've sort of had some people ask me about the barbecue side and some of the expertise. So I thought, Darrell's the best person in the industry. So maybe if you could just tell people just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I originally started in the indoor appliance business many moons ago, back when outdoor kitchens really didn't exist. They were basically charcoal, barbecues out on the back porch during the early 70s. And as time went on, I was in that industry for 20 years, and we kind of transitioned from that briquette type cooking over to built-in or freestanding grills on the back porch. We introduced gas at some point in time along there in the late 70s, early 80s, and then basically progressed through where we were spending as much money on indoor kitchens, or we were spending as much on the outdoor kitchens as we were spending on the indoor kitchen. People were starting to identify where their discretionary income would be best spent. Certainly smart home buyers love outdoor entertainment and things like that, but more importantly, they're always concerned about the value that it creates, in their purchase of an outdoor kitchen, what it adds to the home. But from there, I jumped into the distribution side of things, represented quite a few different outdoor grill manufacturers within a distribution channel, traveled a fair part of the country. That's where I really cut my teeth on seeing a lot of different kitchens. Then from there, went right into kind of working for some factories. And most of that stuff, again, kind of applied from indoor, outdoor. But basically, I became this individual that could, just solve problems. So I was kind of sent all over the country, from Hawaii, to East Coast, South Florida, Texas. And that's where, you really start to see some of the consequences of short-term thinking. I spent a lot of years, started applying that on my next business venture and trying to deliver, services and products that just basically try to create a path that you kind of avoid some of those traps that you get into from contractor to homeowner. Total of probably 30, 40 years banging around in this industry. So if a mistake's been made, I've seen it. So
I mean, that's why you're on, because, I think a lot of our companies, we've seen obviously a huge boost of business and focus on outdoor kitchens during, COVID time. People weren't traveling as much, decided to, build out their outdoor kitchens, and, they're building in gazebos, different types of furnitures, obviously some nice pool decks, putting in pools, and obviously barbecues is a key piece of that. A lot of that centerpiece of your kitchen is based around the grill. And I think when I first met you, my eyes were opened for sure with all the different types of barbecues there were, first of all, but then all the different scenarios that you can get into in terms of either dealing with types of fuel, wind direction, altitude. Talk me through just some of the stuff that you've seen out there, maybe even start with some of the mistakes you've seen and how that could lead into, some really interesting projects.
Well, I think, early on, the biggest mistake that I saw with a lot of people is they started with buying freestanding outstanding grills. And this used to be a luxury brand's opinion. Is you started out young and, you bought your first charcoal grill, probably sat on the tailgate, and you spent, a lot of great times outside with it, taking it with you. And then every time, you got to that point, to the next stage, you'd buy another shiny object and another shiny object. And you do it about every 3 to 5 years. Current stat says that, and this kind of blows me away, but the average American buys a new grill prior to COVID about every 3 years, which is sad in a way. And this is what I saw out there is they go to whether it be Lowe's, Home Depot, or a local dealer, see something that looks great, looks pretty, get it on the back deck. At first, they push a cart out there, but again, only to find out that down the road, you live in Wyoming and you bought a grill that maximum BTUs might be 40, 50,000 BTUs across the grilling surface. And you're an enthusiast. You want to grill, you try to grill as many months out of the year as you can. And you find that as the seasons change, it gets more and more difficult to be successful. Some guys still get it done, but when you don't think about where you're at and the temperatures, you've got a giant radiator there that just swallows up BTUs right and left. And if you can't feed the monster, it's hard to get the job done. And then you get into markets, like South Florida, Hawaii, and you got that sea air, and it's just as crippling because it starts to interact and again just takes what we call a shiny object and just turns it to a pile of rust. Very short period of time. The misconception is we can put something outside, piece of stainless steel, we call it rust resistant and things like that. But the key word is resistant. It doesn't mean it doesn't stop it. And Mother Nature will take over. And it will eventually destroy that unit given the right opportunity. And so often traveling around the country, I'm there trying to solve a problem. I don't have enough heat. And, they're at 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet. And again, they purchased a grill from Lowe's, Home Depot, or whatever it may be that, just quite doesn't put out the BTUs. And the rule of thumb is we lose oxygen. We lose about 4% of the oxygen for every 1,000 feet above sea level. So essentially what happens, you take Denver, they're at 5,000 feet. You're talking about losing 20% of the BTU output. And so if you don't start at a high enough value, because whether it's a luxury grill giving you 30,000 BTUs or an entry-level grill giving you 15 or 10,000 BTUs per burner, they all suffer the same mathematic equation. You're going to lose upward to 20% of your BTUs. Grilling can be somewhat frustrating, especially, you go out and steak is not cheap today. And, you spend what you felt like was a very reasonable amount on your grill only to find that you're just getting subpar rates you can't match, running down to the local steakhouse and getting one of their steaks. Again, people got really frustrated that I spent all this money. I put in a nice piece of chunk of granite. I got a grill here that's 30 inches. It just is not cutting the mustard. What can I go to? And so now you're looking at investment that they just spent on the granite that you're probably going to have to modify because the only brand that's going to probably fit in there is the one they just bought 3 years ago. And so again, try to get all that information front loaded. You want to have longevity out of the products, and so again that's kind of the key thing. So it's altitude, it's humidity, it's salt air. It can even be to the point of, as you mentioned earlier, wind direction can destroy some happy moments. What we try to do is just front load all that information right up front. Look at all those things. So when you are laying out the kitchen, you can advise the homeowner, or if you are the homeowner, determine what your cooking skills are. Chances are it's going to grow because you purchased this grill. Tons of YouTube videos that are going to teach you out there how to cook something. But again, the missing component might always be the equipment that you pick up. You're going to fall short of delivering what you want, to the table. So yeah, it's important to look at each of these grills because it gets confusing. There's a ton of them out there. Every brand, there's brands being distributed by a lot of different firms out of China, and you might have one firm out of China that makes 9 different brand names that's sold here in the U.S. And again, it's buyer beware because I've seen where you're running away from one brand into another shiny object, only 3 to 5 years later learn that you essentially bought the same thing. It could be mystifying and trying to find the right thing for you. And so it's always seek out an expert. Try to find somebody that's got some knowledge to help you along, especially landscape companies. Admittedly, not every customer needs a $10,000 grill. You might live in a home that might demand a $10,000 grill. I mean, that's always, here again, some things you always have to look at. We're a very mobile population. And so we might be in that home for 6-7 years. And so I sold a ton of appliances, indoor and outdoor, through the years, basically based on the value of what it creates for the homeowner.
Right.
And it might exceed what they're going to do with it, but it certainly leaves something in place because the next person that comes along may have a passion. And I've seen that numerous times. I bought this house because of this outdoor kitchen. And you're like, really? Not the indoor kitchen? No, we live in the outdoors. And so it's important that you get this information up front and avoid a lot of pitfalls down the road.
Do you think it's, just a lack of knowledge, more learning needed, just knowing what questions to ask? Because, I think when most people, obviously we're talking about more the residential side, most people think about, we'll go to Home Depot or some of the other big box stores and just do something there. Whereas, knowing where to go, where the expertise are, knowing what questions to ask. I mean, is that a good starting point, you feel?
Yeah, I think, the tool that we didn't have for a lot of years was, the internet. You still tend to see information driven towards the mid to lower range because that's the bulk of what's sold. It comes down to, spending some time, educate yourself prior. As good as I hope some dealers would be, sometimes it's just difficult to find that individual out there. So, but when you do find that individual, they're going to hopefully guide you in the right direction. It's not a big box retailer. It's going to be that individual hearth dealership or luxury appliance store. But again, it's always, do your homework. Right. But it's funny. My wife and I have a rule. I'm not allowed to talk about anything when we visit someone's home because they know the minute they find out I'm in the appliance business or the grill business or whatever, the conversation just gets lost. And she goes, blurry eyed over, hearing that conversation for the, 100th time. It truly, people make good decisions when they're given the information. And that's been my passion. I always, regardless of whether I sell something or not, it's just to leave a little bit of nugget there so that they can up their game. So hopefully maybe I'm not out there trying to solve their problem down the road after they purchase something. Right. And I often scratch my head, well, why did you buy this? I mean, this clearly, is not doing what you thought it was going to do. Or it did, and it just only did it for 3 years. Well, your warranty is, subpar nowadays. And, there's a lot of brands out there, talking about warranties, that now will warranty it for lifetime. And, those are the things you need to be looking at because, like I say, Mother Nature will take over, whether you use it or not.
But where does that education piece come in? Is it the homeowner who's ultimately getting that product into their outdoor kitchen? Is it the contractor who's doing the install piece? Or is it the designer, the architect who's speccing out? Or is it a combination of all of them?
Well, I think it's a combination, but I think the primary driving one that probably has the most influence is the contractor. The designers and all that will work within what's given to them. Make room for this grill, make room for this. And unfortunately, a lot of people have the attitude of, they always want to save somebody money. And this is one area that you get what you pay for. A contractor always felt better service to himself, gaining a little bit of knowledge and guiding that homeowner through the process. Because, like I said, my assumption is that contractor does it day in and day out from one home to the next. But coming from that individual, obviously, they've already signed a contract to do business. So there is trust there. In that trust, if you deliver a product that gives that homeowner 10, 15 years enjoyment, what better calling card is that, for your next job? I mean, the old 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers.
Right.
And so it's really just educating yourself as a contractor, landscaper, to try to guide that homeowner through those steps, or find somebody in your backyard that coach you along the way to help guide that customer to make that choice. Ultimately, I'm a retailer, I'm a salesman. It's not always to move people up, but it's to move people up in a way that meets their budget. It might be a stretch, but you say, when you're considering the joy and the use that it sounds like you're going to do here, relatively minimal over a long period of time. I mean, that comes with the landscaping too. People are looking for good, solid, beautiful projects that sustains itself over, a certain period of time. Again, nothing lasts forever, but nothing's more frustrating to see a patio laid and then 2 or 3 years start seeing, everything moving on you, and only to come to find out that, maybe not the most care was given, to lay it right. Early on when I was calling on, landscape companies or contractors, they just saw it as a shiny object, just like the interior kitchen, back in the 70s, late 70s on interior kitchens, it might have cost maybe $3,000 to buy kitchen appliances because we just didn't have the dream to do anything any different. There's 4 walls, had a dishwasher, refrigerator, and stove. But as you know, over time that changed. Well, the same thing is happening to the backyard experience. COVID certainly drove that home, drove a lot of people into their backyards. And they started, realizing I'm on a staycation a lot more than I ever had. But over time, people, it's their place to go and relax. And, there's plenty of studies that says, being outdoors, cooking outdoors is healthy, whether it's, cooking or just the environment of being with your family and all that. There's so many good things that, come around, with that. But over time, we just, now that, this kitchen has expanded and the level of education, the consumers early on didn't have much, but today's consumers come in armed really with a lot of information. Some of it misguided, a lot of it from past experience. The fun part too is I can't tell you how many times I worked with somebody, an individual, a salesman, and worked with a client, and the first word out of that client's mouth, there's no way I'm spending that kind of money on this grill. And I said, well, that's fine. Let's just go over what it here you're at 5,000 feet, you're at 7,000 feet. Here's what's going to happen to you. Here's 5 different brands. We break it down step by step. Walk you through. Here's the one that can combat this the best and deliver, basically 12 months of enjoyment. And they're like, well, that's still a lot of money. I said, well, let's start eliminating some of these features and get back down to here. Well, you just said that this one is only 12,000 BTUs. And I said, yeah, it's only 12,000. You'll cook hamburgers and hot dogs. And if that's what you're trying to do, then great. But I get the sense that you want to do more out. And I can substantiate if you go and spend this amount or find this product with said quality, you can actually probably even expand what you're doing, indoors to your outdoors to help your indoors. I could probably get your cost if you're a person thinking about, how much time am I going to really use this? I said, well, believe it or not, Christmas Eve, I traditionally have cooked for 20, 30 people. Today, I'm lucky I have a bigger stove. I have a big commercial 48-inch stove, but I still utilize every piece of equipment that I have outdoors because we do a lot of fish fry. Grill burners typically at their best will deliver about 750 degrees. But I guarantee if you go to Ruth Chris or any of these other high-end steakhouses, they're cooking their steaks under 1,000 to 1,500 degrees. 2 to 3 minutes per side, and then they move it over and finish it in the oven. So now the infrared burners on these grills, and now they're available. They used to be just a luxury item. Now they're available all the way down through, the entry level at some point, but they get smaller and smaller as you go. But the point being is I just cooked them a steak on an infrared burner, something they've never experienced. And literally you'll have to cook another steak because they enjoyed that first steak so much. And they can't believe that they would be able to produce that, at home. That's something that they've always had to go pay for. Again, I probably got a little long-winded there.
The performance of the grill and the quality of the food is obviously a big piece of this, but I think we were talking offline, and I've been in situations where husband or wife will maybe say, hey, we want a Wolf or a Sub-Zero type fridge or refrigerator or something. So, there's something in that brand recognition, but yes. I think often that is missing when they start thinking about the outdoor kitchen piece. So when you start thinking about some of these higher end homes, $2, $3, $5, $10 million homes, it just doesn't make sense in terms of that ROI to think about a cheaper grill, especially, a lot of those homes are maybe business owners that are entertaining. Either they've got a big family or maybe they've got clients around.
It is very frustrating. And, being an appliance dealer, we would do, I guess where I finished up is whatever used to sell for $3,000 for a custom home. Some of my biggest homes we'd spend $120,000, $150,000 on appliances, and that might be multiple locations. Refrigerators throughout the house. But in general, $50,000 to $80,000 was not out of the question. And like you say, it's aligned with luxury brands. And the grill industry, it's hard to know that nowadays because there's just so many of them. There are, typically there are few that have earned a name, but again, it's in a very small, knowledge base. I just cringe every time I walk into, a very luxury home. I'm fortunate, I live in Colorado. I did a lot of work up in Aspen and Bell. And I mean, literally, I've probably been in every high-end market in the country. And a lot of times clients that would make purchases weren't the person actually using it. As you mentioned, they were hiring someone to come in and do the entertainment, to do the cooking. And nothing was more frustrating than was to give them a tool that was so subpar that, they probably would say, well, I'm not going to come back next time if we're going to do this again. And I laugh. I mean, that's why we watch cooking shows, because we like to put this, all these chefs through different gyrations, and they figure it out. I mean, I always say a good downscaled skier can ski on anything, but he just figure out what he had and utilize the equipment. But in this case, you just don't have to. There are grills out there that will do exactly what you want to do. There are power burners. I mean, Asian food in the home does not exist. Typically, you go to a restaurant, it's 60 to 100,000 BTUs plus to cook that meal. And you can't technically do that indoors with any gas burner. I mean, the biggest gas burner you can find indoors is 30,000. And the outdoor kitchen, gosh, you can get to 60,000 BTUs, and you can get pretty darn close. And again, your family looks at you, if you're the cooker, he or she, there's nothing more rewarding than saying, man, I don't know why we go downtown anymore to buy food. I mean, you're nailing it right here. And that's what brands have been trying to earn their stars and stripes. And like I said, Kalamazoo, there's a handful of U.S. manufacturers. Kalamazoo, Heston, Alfresco, Lynx, Twin Eagles, those are all exceptionally good brands. And I don't tout just because they're U.S. made, but they are. And, they put everything in there.
Where do you start with looking? I mean, do you start with the brand, or do you start with just some of the basic specs? So like, trying to think through here, either warranty, certain type of stainless steel, BTUs.
Yeah, so you always start with, where do you live in the U.S.? If you're above the frost line, north, that's going to take you what I would call a grade B grill. Anyway, you're going to determine whether you're, predominantly, in a cold market for, 4 to 6, 7 months out of the year, or are you in the southern market? That's one of the first criteria. And that alone can either add a bunch of grills or eliminate a bunch of grills based on where you're at. Altitude, I'd bang away at it because I live at altitude. If I had, whether it be indoor or outdoor, the most problems I saw across the country was due to altitude and gas appliances. And it doesn't take much altitude. It's generally anything above 2,000 feet. You have to essentially address it, either making burner regulator adjustments or something like that. But you kind of start there. Where do I live in the U.S.? And then try to set the bar. Well, a type B BTU burner, I might look at something anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 BTUs. Okay, we got your grill. Now start looking at all these different grills and, might meet that criteria. The next thing is fit and finish. Every grill has a perception of how it's going to integrate into the island. Some integrate very successfully and have the full ensemble, the access doors, the side burners, and everything that's very good for masonry type installations. Others do a very poor job of it. They don't think about how it integrates with that raised stone panel. And that's where the landscaper really has to come into play and interject there. But if you're thinking stone or wood, and if you're thinking wood, that's going to take you down a different path, on what it's going to look like. But you're going to start with where you're located, then you're going to start with, the BTUs, and then you're going to start with the aesthetic, and then you're going to try to figure out, what all do you need? Is it just a grill, an access door? Is it going to be propane or natural? Am I going to be able to plumb natural gas to it? Your power needs, what are your power needs going to be? Then you get into, well, I would like a refrigerator. Well, there's a lot of, again, another segment of the market that is really diluted with a ton of models. Some are food rated, some are not. Commonly, I'll go out and they might be complaining about it's not keeping their pot cold enough. And I get out there and I say, well, it's a wine cooler. It's only keeping it at 40 degrees. It's not designed to get it to, to that 36 to 40, or 38 degrees. If you want it chilled, that's a different unit. So be thinking, is it going to be food storage? Is it going to be beverage storage in general? And again, that starts to send you down a funnel of, what you might choose. And typically what happens, most people stick to one brand because that aesthetic is carried throughout the entire kitchen, from the warming drawer to the trash drawer handle, access doors and things like that.
No, I'm assuming, I've seen a lot more people talking about, adding on griddles, adding on pizza ovens, kegerators. Have you seen a bigger trend towards getting some of those accessories?
Yeah, I have a chart here somewhere that just basically every one of those categories has just shot up dramatically. Keep in mind, we just started, 20, 5 years ago with just a grill standing on a cart. Then we went to, grill and access. The kegerators, with the onslaught of, the microbreweries all across the country, you just see tons of people enjoying that lifestyle. And now you have product that's engineered to be outdoors and can deliver, quality beer at the touch of your fingertips.
Right.
You see a lot of that. I think griddles and side burners, again, it's all a matter of budget. I think it's powerful to have a griddle, separate griddle by itself, a pro griddle. There's so many different things that you can do. I mean, I can cook a steak on a griddle and sear it. And, I got one son that's the only way he likes it. He doesn't like it on the gas grill. I got, my youngest son, just at 9 years old, he realized the beauty of an infrared burner, and never ordered another steak in a restaurant because he knew they couldn't cook it unless, he was in a really nice steakhouse. They couldn't cook it to what he could do at home, with the grill. But having a power burner or side burner, you have to look at your cooking hat, your style. Are you doing sauces while you're grilling? Things like that. All that, I can live, with a grill without all those accessories if I buy a grill that has all the interchangeable components. So I can take a grill, and typically it's a luxury grill that you're going to be able to swap out the grate, slip in charcoal tray. You'll be able to, grill with just plain charcoal. Start your gas burner, get the charcoal lit, and, grill over charcoal. Next day, pull that out, throw in, a griddle, and be able to prep, the next morning for pancakes and eggs. If you want to smoke, starting, late morning, and get that grill set up and do, a smoking tray, several smoking trays in there to do that style of cooking. So you can get one grill that's very versatile. And I was, notorious I enjoyed cooking for clients, but I probably more enjoyed cooking for salesmen and warehouse people, because if they ate off of a grill that they were delivering and installing or selling, they had a lot more respect for it. And I could pull in there at 5 a.m. and load up that entire grill with cast iron skillets and make omelets for literally 40, 50 people. Again, this is where you'd have to choose the right size grill. Am I going to do it with a 30, 36, or 42 or 48? Now, those are things you look at. What capacity do I need? I didn't need to be indoors on my stove. I got 8 burners to choose from. On my grill out there, I can cluster and make it one giant, what we call French burner style cooking. Everywhere I put a skillet, I'm cooking. And, I can set up and I can feed a lot of people with it. And that's getting to this, again, multiple use. How can I substantiate why you might spend 5, 10 grand? Well, use it in every aspect of your life to be outdoors. Everything you're doing indoors, you can do on this outdoor. And actually, you can be more dynamic. I've owned represented some great brands that can cook very expensive cuts of meat, a prime rib, and I can do great things, with convection cooking. But on my grill, gosh, I can add moisture, I can add smoke, I can rotisserie it. There's so many things that I can add to it that literally, again, I just can't do indoors.
Right. You're making me hungry, Darrell.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of it. Is the excitement is, you just keep trying new things. And, the best thing is to fail. So you do it again, and entertain the family, your neighbors. And, it doesn't take a lot to do it. But when you have the right tool, it's just easier, less planning when you have the right tool.
I like that. We're pretty close to wrapping up here. But if you've, if there's some listeners on the podcast here who are saying to themselves, "Hey, this is all totally new to me. I love what Darrell's presenting. I have no idea how to start the process because maybe they've got a client they want to put a grill in, maybe they want to buy their own grill. What would be a good starting place for them to start that ball rolling and just trying to figure out what do we need?"
Well, again, visit the website. I'm with a company right now called the Patio Experience, and we are made up of individuals like myself that have experienced a lot out there and pitfalls. And so a lot of the information and content on our website is driven towards educating the customer. And, and at the end of the day, I've always said it's very easy to sell stuff. You don't succeed until that owner has had that for 5, 10 years. And during those 5 and 10 years, every day they think they made the right decisions. And so what we do is we load the website with just tons of information on that. And there's a lot of other websites that have plenty of content on it too. But educate yourself. and you'll start to get through the weeds and start to see daylight on what you're leaning towards. Then start shopping.
That's cool. How I know you mentioned the website there, but just to clarify, how do people get in touch with you? Is it best done through the website, or is it LinkedIn, or email, or phone? What's the best?
Well, through the website. Currently, my information's on there. I've got a phone number here. You can reach me, almost anytime. We cover pretty much every time zone across the country, including Hawaii. But if you visit the website, you can call direct, you can email, you can sign up. We have a calendar that you can set up a time, 30, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever you need for consult. And again, our focus is to load you up with information. At the end of the day, if we have the right product, we have the right product. But I learned this a long time in the appliance business. You're better off guiding them in the right direction to the right brand. They may not buy from me, at that point. But over time, we'll see them again. And hopefully they'll either realize more what they want now, because they sold their home, they saw the beauty of what it did in that home, and now they're on their next home and they want to go to that next level. And so again, we take people. I've had homeowners that I've dealt with for 15 years, 20 years, and in that time frame, they moved on the average of 5 times. We outfitted it. Might not have got the first one because they went to Lowe's, Home Depot, or whatever. I understand that, starting a family, blah, blah, blah. But they always kept it in the back of their mind what the goal was. And when they've got that first opportunity, whether it was indoors or outdoors. Our main focus is to, especially contractors, is give you an avenue too, because when you get down to indoor appliances or outdoor appliances, homeowners are moving in within 2 weeks or less, especially if you're doing an add-on outdoor kitchen. I mean, they're just chomping at the bit to get at what you just created for them. And nothing's more frustrating than not having the right detail, right finish, right look. And so what we do is we try to eliminate those pitfalls so that when you get right down to the final minute, no problems. Everything goes together. We want you to be a customer for life. We're here for that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Darrell. I just want to emphasize the website. I believe it's thepatioexperience.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I do have an email if you want that. It's dturman@thepatioexperience.com. Okay.
Awesome. Well, Darrell, really great to see you. Thanks for helping. Educate
well, I hope
the audience on what we should be looking for in terms of a nice grill experience on our outdoor kitchen. Thank you for that.
Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Cool. Okay. Thank you, Darrell. Right. Take care.
Thank you.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today. We've got some great Ironman mindset takeaways for your business and for your leadership role. This is Robert Klinkenbeard, the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. Check us out on all the different podcast channels. Check us out on YouTube. Like, share. Also check out our website, thecommerciallandscaper.com or wilson360.com. Check out some of the digital courses. Check out the book, The Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs. We want to make sure we have a pure, dead, brilliant day. Cheers, everyone.